lead our meeting this morning is the Finance Committee Chair, Mr. George Ward.
Thank you, Fred. We have a full group of our committee gathered today. One person online, Harding Bell, and Jamie Rogers and I are in person. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the September 2025 Finance Committee meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? None. All in favor, aye. Aye. Passes.
Aye.
So we are going to talk about the fiscal year 2027 budget and capital plan. So I'll turn that over to Fred and Nikki to lead the show.
Thank you, George. So, yeah, we're happy to bring to the Finance Committee our proposed budget for fiscal year 2027. Our mission statement is we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. And to jump off, we'll talk in a moment about our highlights from this current fiscal year 2026. Of course, our transit center renovation, and then the launch of our Lextran service are two major projects that we worked on and completed this year. We did receive low no emissions bus facility grant awards. Those are competitive grant dollars for more than $6 million that will be for CNG fixed route and paratransit vehicles. Those are incorporated into our capital plan. We've had improved paratransit performance and engagement. We've advanced the strategic plan and positioned ourselves for the microtransit launch later this year. So looking ahead to what we have coming up in 2027, we're going to continue our planning cycle that we've talked about, which is strategic plan, then long range plan, and then comprehensive operations analysis. Our next step in that program will be a long range plan. So we also have that incorporated into our capital plan. We want to continue to realize paratransit on-time performance improvements. I'm also happy to share that we do have a new paratransit general manager from our ATV Dev, so we will be introducing her to the board hopefully at our April meeting. It's time for updates to our DV Year Top 6 plans, and we have a real focus on safety and security. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today is an improved stance on safety and security. We also want to continue our program of fixed route service improvements, focus on on-time performance. Again, we're going to launch that microtransit service later this year, and then incorporate those new vehicles from those grant awards into our fleet, both paratransit and fixed route.
Where did the RATP Dev manager come from?
I believe it's Las Vegas. She was previously a transit employee. So, we share resumes. Okay, so the FY 2027 capital program was included in your materials for this morning. Again, this was a continuation of what we started last year to bring our capital plan a little more to life and give you some more detail on where the funds are coming from, where they can be spent, and how we need to prioritize looking into the future. There are two unfunded priority projects. There's a note on your capital plan about those, the fare collection systems, which I do think we need to have a more engaged conversation about, and the paratransit facility, which we've had some conversations about leading up to today. Fare collection systems, that number should surprise you a little bit. $5 million is a very expensive ask. I'm not sure that would be the path that we need to go. However, if we were going to replace the systems that we have on board now that would allow for cash fare collection on board, that's about what it would look like. It's about $70,000 a week.
How are the other transit agencies handling no cash?
I think the Dayton is the best example. Everything is pushed to mobile ticketing. If you need cash, there's a vending machine, or in our case, it would be at the transit center. You can go and make cash transactions there, pushing things more away from single ride fares into passes. So a way of incentivizing that different sort of approach. And there's some agencies that are going back to the old-fashioned, like, it's plastic, but box that you would just stuff $1 in, and that's kind of bad. But I think that decision, I believe it was in my memo, that decision is something we're going to have to really talk about and consider. It could be a much less expensive project if we go more towards mobile ticketing and less than accepting cash. We have some information from our last COA about the saturation of smartphones in our service. It was higher than what we thought. Again, if we do move forward with a long-range plan, I don't know if the timeline will work. We would have a survey as part of that. Also, how our folks could interact with the system.
2008, 2009.
So if you think $5 million for a new system like this, $1 billion a year repair.
My first thought.
It's tough, right? I mean, it's tough to invest that much money and, yeah, and get so little fare box revenue out of it. What would the finance committee like to see to help us with that discussion? That was one of the things I wanted to kind of get from the group today.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking, I've asked the questions on this at last, because it's a 5-year payback.
It's almost not
And you extend the life, yeah. So, I guess alternatives.
The alternatives are going to be more in that mobile ticketing, smartphone. Again, we have the transit center, and the vast majority of our fare paying riders, that's excluding UK, are going to be at the transit center. So we do have that support. Now, customer service is not open for the entire span of service, but we do have that as an asset that we can use.
And there's probably a lot of riders there on Coastal Road that just get to the transit center.
There's some.
How many agencies have gone cashless? If we were to go that route, is that something, you're saying Dayton, but is that one of 100?
That's one that I've seen that's similar to us. Others are making steps toward it. I'm not sure if any others that I'm aware of, that have made the full jump yet. But I think other agencies are struggling with the same thing. Our fare recovery is low, and the capital expense of this equipment is really high.
Is that why some agencies just go fare free? Or no?
That was part of, I think, some of the conversation when Kansas City did it. Our fare collection expense, you get into wage and fringe, FTEs, and everything, including the media, the actual fare media itself. We talked about credit card process fees, all that stuff. It's a lot. It really eats at that revenue.
But your question, what else would you want for us to make a decision?
Yeah.
Is the next step.
And we can bring more, maybe case studies. Maybe we can ask David for some information of how, what their pain points have been to make this transition. And I don't need an answer on this today, but something to think about. Is cashless on board something that we are willing to consider? That's one thing to consider, to think about.
I just be concerned with people that don't have other needs.
The folks who don't have bank accounts.
Do we have a metal box where the money goes in?
Yes, there's a vault, and I think Allie and Nikki can talk through, you guys go in the money room and the vaults and all that.
Yeah, the drivers themselves never physically touch the cash, it's in the metal box, as you said. And it hooks up to basically one side of the wall, and then only we have access to the other side of that money room, we call it.
So 3 times a week we count and do our deposits.
What is the percentage of cash to non-cash? Is ours mostly cash right now?
It's mostly cash right now,
A lot of ones.
a lot of ones.
We have a person that spends, only Wednesday, Friday, she spends probably 2 hours. Everybody Wednesday, Friday, bundling it.
Do you have a money counter?
She doesn't have to count it, they just bundle it. But she doesn't physically do the coins, there's coins too, so they easy. And really, it's a must do because our current system is to make a policy decision.
Yeah.
From what I read, because they are discontinuing this technology.
We are already on B-stock and struggling to find parts to replace the equipment that we have. It's no longer supported by the manufacturer. It's going to hang on a little bit longer, but yeah, we're at the point that we need to have these conversations and take the path forward.
Well, we make an assumption that we're not the only ones facing it.
Yep.
And not the only ones that don't want to pay $5 million for whatever is out there. So it'd be nice to see what other people are
case studies.
going to do. It's a big enough problem, maybe we should invent something.
But it's hard to justify, I guess, $5 million to get $5 million back. So then at that point, we would have just gone there free for 5 years.
Make everybody happy.
And like the actual writers would have had a better experience. So that's a hard thing, I think, for me to justify.
And yeah, I wanted $5 million to be in there because that is
Right.
really close to what it would cost. I don't think it's the right move. But I think this helps me, so, we can go back and put these case studies together and show, okay, this is really what they went through, their decision points. And then those agencies are sort of stepping towards that, but haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. We have to also consider, fair transit, because we very free on fixture out fair transit buses.
See what Transdev's doing.
Actually, we talked earlier this week, we're trying to get a group together to discuss fare collection as a topic. Several of the agencies, Transit Works for it, experience. So we'll report back out on that. And we'll talk about it again at work session, just so the full board is aware that these conversations are coming sooner rather than later.
Do we know on paratransit if that's mostly cash?
Most of the cash is saved on about roughly $20,000 a month. In that range.
Like mostly cash.
That's surprising, I don't know why, but that's all cash. How much is GenFair today? That's our technology system? How much, is that something we paid for many years ago and aren't paying for in this budget, or?
We budget, I think, about $30,000 a year for support and, maintenance, but that's just for the cost of GenFair. That doesn't include our staff time and any other that go along with like the fair media, which is more expensive than tap cards or commercial alley bucket fees or something like that.
Close to.
It depends on how many we order at one time. The more we order, the cheaper the cards are.
How much are transfers?
Really cheap. 'Cause there's nothing printed on them, we're just basically ordering.
And did we pay something for it to be implemented in 2009? Like, was there a larger capital investment?
It was about $3 million back in 2009.
Yeah. So we made an investment at some point, but.
It was,
Sorry.
CMAC? Or,
Okay.
and there's potentially grant money for some of this stops and some of this stuff, but, I can go into it, assuming there's no grant money in it. And so on the paratransit facility, we've had some conversations around that. I think we will have, I think Hardy and I talked, we'll have more in-depth conversation on that perhaps in May. Hardy, you think that might be appropriate? Okay.
Do you have more options for that?
Not at this point, but just really trying to decide what path makes the most sense. And we'll try to narrow down more options. Okay. Update on our fleet. So I think maybe between the last time we heard about the fleet, and now I think we got new CNGs in service, is that right? Or right around the time we did it last time. So active fleet of 68. We have some vehicles that are still coming off, like the old trolleys. They're coming out of service now. We've got that average age of the fleet looking pretty good. 11 vehicles are at or beyond 12 year useful life. Then we have great funding that's programmed into this capital plan for 7 fixed route vehicles. That is the bus and bus facilities competitive grant award that we got. There are 4 gasoline vehicles. Those are the electric railways. Those are in service now. And then you can really see that this shows the direction and effort that we came to back when I started in 2016 of smoothing out vehicle purchases. We had was it 2007, we had 17 to work through. So So we've done that, we've made it a little more consistent year over year, and I think things are looking pretty good on our fixture out fleet plan.
How are the electrical buses doing?
The one pain point we're having with those is we need to deploy some more chargers, some more depot chargers, and there's some great money that we have available for that. We just need to get kind of off the ground. I think the number of electric vehicles that we have in the fleet is about where we need to be. I don't know that I would push it any further than what it is. Again, this doesn't include the Proteras, so they're out of service and really have no intention of bringing it back into service.
Are they not part of this?
They're not part of this. They are decommissioned.
What year did we get those?
We got them in 16, we deployed them early 17. They've not been in service probably 4 years now, at least.
Where are they?
They're back on the hill. We need to get them, I would like to get them off the lot. But
What was the protocol?
the FTX and this permission. They still have that.
And then what, it goes like on gov auctions or something?
It depends on how they want to dispose of it. If there's some other agency that would want them, we're happy to get them. Transfer them over. For the batteries, I'm not sure how they would decommission and deconstruct them. That is something that we want to continue, and we've asked the FTA. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get them off the lot soon.
And then the ones that you have in service now, how do they do in cold weather?
They do okay. I don't think it's as reliable as a CNG or diesel or any. And we put them on shorter blocks. That's the schedule for the bus.
Yeah.
That gets them back earlier, so they have more time here to charge. So that's a little bit of an operational hindrance.
That's at the end of the day, or it's,
Yeah.
do you have to do anything in the middle of the day when it's really cold?
No.
That's good.
No, but I don't think they can make a full block, like from 5:30 a.m. until midnight. the way they are.
Yeah.
So that's really what limits us in the pushing forward of the election.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, so we're at almost 2/3 CNG now, and that's, especially with the diesel prices as they've been this year, that's been really helpful.
So what's hybrid for those, the 2 and 2012?
Yes, those are old diesel electric hybrids. And I think they're at the point now that they're coming out of service. We did hybrid battery replacements last summer, a couple times.
Every 5 years, I
5
think.
years. It's quite expensive to replace those.
There was a comment somebody made to me a long time ago. Jamie Allen Feather says, it's hard maybe when you're around, but having 3 different types of fuel is complicated and more costly because you have to have different parts and different mechanics and different this and that. And so, being focused more on just 2 types is better. And I'm glad that most of them are CNG because that seems to be. How's the price of that doing?
About $1.87 right now.
It's up.
It's gone from $1.79 to $1.87 in the last 4 months, but it's stayed about the same.
Okay.
On the paratransit side,
Real quick, one observation
sure,
on
sure,
back
sure.
there. So if I'm reading this right, we haven't bought a gas vehicle since before 2007?
not for fixed route. We
Okay.
haven't bought them for paratransit. Because those are essentially the same vehicles that we would use for paratransit. That's why they show up here. But this is the Lextran tow piece, that's what those are.
Oh, okay. And we bought 4 of those for the Lextran? And so it's showing up here because now that is considered a fixed route versus, but we have been always buying gasoline for those. But we don't have any gasoline traditional.
Not for
Vehicles.
revenue service, we have gasoline for our non-revenue fleet. That's our support vehicles,
right.
maintenance trucks,
Yeah.
those things. We do have those, most of those are gas. I think we have like 1 diesel truck and maybe 1 hybrid.
But not counted here in
Not
this
counted.
ones, right?
Where
So-
do they refuel?
Here.
The gasoline does?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
And then, I know for a while, because there was a lot of federal funding in electric, we were really focused on electric. I don't know that there's as much federal funding or emphasis anymore on electric. And so our new grant was at 4 CNG vehicles. And then do you hypothesize that's probably our vehicles going forward will be mostly, like that's where the funding will be CNG?
Yes, as George mentioned, the secondary fuel type is going to be what we work on. I think I wouldn't want to go into another one like hydrogen or any of the emerging fuels. If there were funding for diesels that come available, I wouldn't say no. We would at least have that conversation. Because of the operational sort of ceiling that we have with electric vehicles. The CNG works well for us. We did the investment in the fueling station out here years ago. That's worked out well for us. So, I mean, again, I think this really tells a good story of the strategies that we had 10 years ago come to fruition, and we are in a much better position to run our agency probably.
They became part of the Florida
Yeah,
also.
Yeah.
So that was the big change.
that CNG became part of it.
Yeah.
CNG became eligible.
CNG did.
Oh, no, so that's why. And I'm just thinking, I guess 10 years forward, will it be mostly diesel, CNG, and electric? Given kind of where the funding and priorities are right now.
That's what it feels like. Again, I think our electrics are kind of where capped where they are.
Okay.
So we would, I think, first look for CNG. If diesel were available, I don't think we would say no. We would take a look at that as well. There's not a huge savings, I don't think, between the diesel vehicle and a CNG vehicle. But we do have that knowledge base here. It's not, we're not to a cutting edge technology. This is a pretty standard.
And this is the year they went into service, or the year that they were purchased?
This is the year that they were this model year. But everything is in service this year. Yeah.
Always good to look at that. As it's flagged out.
And the same thing for Paratracer, right? I mean, we took the big step last year. So there's 23 vehicles we put in 2025. We are now going to try to smooth that out too. We think, funds for 14. 10 of those would be part of the Bus Facilities Grant Award. And then with 53, 10 allocation, I think we could probably do 4 more. That's aggressive for what we would be in a perfect world, but because we started from such a spot where we didn't have enough vehicles, I think it kind of makes sense. And then moving forward, we can flatten that out and get to our normal pace of 10 vehicles a year is about what we need to keep everything nice and consistent.
Those are all cutaways last year.
Yes,
And that's what you need, right?
that's what we need. That's going to be our standard practice moving forward is the 2x12 cutaways.
When were all those vans? Were they purchased or leased, the vans I see around?
They're leased, the 2017s, no, 2021s leased. And we need to work those out of the system too.
Those are those 3 passenger vans?
Yeah. All of these vehicles are gasoline. And I think that's pretty common.
Where do they fuel?
So we have a contract with, is it Riley Wood?
Valor, yeah, it used to be Riley Wood, their name is Valor now. They have fleet cards tied to the vehicle.
3, 4, 5 different spots around town.
So the drivers are responsible.
Correct. And Chris monitors the invoices and, we have a contract, so we don't pay the pump price.
Right.
Is there any chance of fraud?
There used to be, we've taken every account, because they used to have cards assigned to individuals. We've changed all that where it's assigned to the vehicle, so there's a lot less chance of fraud, and Chris monitors it very closely.
So let's get into the budget that we are proposing this year. Is the balanced budget of $39,335,613. Some assumptions, and I'll get through this slide and I'll turn it over to property tax assumption is 3.5%. We do have those partnerships to fund microtransit and Lextran in here. Those are one-time allocations. We don't have a recurring funding source for either of those programs yet. Operating expenses include increased funding for safety and security. That is both in terms of our relationship with the Lexington Police. And there's 2 FTEs in here. One for operations that will help safety and security posturing transit center, and the other for the Department of Safety and Security. We are not proposing any service expansions beyond those partnership pilot programs with microtransit and Lextran. Everything else is staying the same. We are making these assumptions on fuel, diesel at $4 a gallon, CNG at $2 a gallon equivalent, and gasoline at $3 a gallon. So with that,
What do you pay for gas right now?
We had, gas is about, the last invoice yesterday was $3.31. That's the highest I've seen it. It's been anywhere from $2.80 to $3.20. Been running.
That's one of my concerns, is just do we budget enough for fuel this year?
Okay.
But it's not known in any year.
We budgeted $3 this year. We're definitely gonna have to go up on that based on what we've seen right now. But the latest Opus price yesterday was diesel was at $4.47. That's the highest I've seen since like 2008. We pay, our contract pays, we pay 2 cents below Opus price, or whatever that is. We pay 2 cents less than that, so it's running about $4.47. We're looking at budgeting. We looked at $4 and $4.25. Every quarter is about $50,000. So we tried to get as accurate number as we could. We're using less diesel than we have been, using more CNG, and then but I'll get more into that in a minute. Our revenue, we had looked at our passenger revenues. We looked at staying flat. Our passenger revenue is about 1.1 million, and then we have a little bit in there, about 20,000 for our football shuttles. And so we haven't seen that really increase. We're below budget this year, so we left that flat. The advertising revenue is based on our contract, so it will go up $10,000 this year, $345,000. We have our property tax. We budgeted at 3.25. 3.2. I'm just still doing fuel, I guess. 3.5%. We've seen the last few years. 2024 was 5.7%. 25 was 5.6. 26 is right about 4%. So we went with 3.5 for 27 because we have seen it come down. So, but it's been up the last few years. But we expected that. We talked about that several years about that flattening out. So we did go with 3.5% there. Our state funding, we have. This is the match to our 5307 grant for our capital maintenance and our paratransit costs. The federal assistance, this is our 5307 funding for paratransit and capital maintenance. It has gone down a little bit this year from what it was last year. Not a significant amount, but it has gone down some. All the transit agencies have seen that across the country. Our UK partnership that is based on our current service. Last year we had 2.5. It actually increased to 2.6 for 2026. So we should know in the next few months if they're going to change any service there. Our miscellaneous revenue includes, for the 2026, that includes $320,000 for our Lex ride, and then our 2027 includes $725,000 for our microtransit partnerships. We have added an expense to 2027 for microtransit, so we've added $725,000 of expenses, $725,000 of revenue. So you will see that is a little bit different this year.
So we didn't add the 320?
The 320 is in 2026. Since we started that and this month, so we've added that to 2026.
And those two covered the upfront capital cost, not the rider. We're paying up the payroll for the drivers.
It's the other way around. So the capital cost for Lextran was a carbon reduction grant that we won through the Lexington area MPO. The local match was done the last budget cycle.
Right.
For microtransit, that RFP is still open, but there's an option for the companies to bid using our vehicles. But we want as much of the revenue that's received from the city to go into operations.
And
Does that 325 carry forward, or is it one time?
That's a one-time allocation. And that includes also funds that we received from Lex Park, Downtown Lexington Partnership, Fund for Greater Lexington, and Visit Lex.
Is that one-time money too?
Yes. So this is going to run us through this year.
Yeah.
And then we'll get back to the partners. To
I guess people will reassess.
And reassess to see if we want to try it again next year.
So you're in this past weekend,
Yes.
and we're proud of it.
200 trips.
Do you have any estimate of what you thought it would be the first weekend?
No idea.
did any of the partners have expectations of?
I don't think of ridership, but in terms of media coverage, publicity, it went really well.
It's Thursday through,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And it will run until last week until Halloween.
Okay, any questions on revenue?
I thought the property tax percentage this year was higher than what you said.
I looked at 4.3% over last year.
In the budget last year, we budgeted 4, we budgeted 3.5.
3.5.
I feel like we budgeted 3.5 almost every year. I think maybe when you were Dr. Capo was here, he was more conservative, and we lowered it just to have that.
3.5 is a good number, budget, I think.
I have more revenue.
Oh, go ahead.
A question. So that's pretty stable, but then our passenger revenue is the only thing kind of decreasing. Everything else seems to be more of a stay the course. Federal assistance going down a little bit, $1 million. Is that just because we don't think there's gonna be much money federal going towards transit?
Yeah, we usually have to estimate, but that is actually real numbers.
Yeah.
When they release the enforcement, but, yeah, that's,
So passenger revenue going down, federal assistance going down, but we've got more local money, but those are piloted towards two very direct things.
I think I forgot to mention miscellaneous revenue also includes the money market account, the interest that we have from money market. Okay, operating
Okay, hang
expenses.
on a second. On micro transit, what vehicles were you using?
It's either vehicles that the company would bring or the Transit Connect vans. Those were purchased 23. And what we've been doing with those is as we put cutaways into the paratransit service, we bring those out. We've used some of those for our sport vehicles, so supervisor sport vehicles. Should the contractor, or should we allow the contractor, we could use 3 of those for microtransit.
How many passengers are there?
On
Front, three
Three.
seats in the back. That converts into one wheelchair.
they're small, but that's a typical micro transit size.
Operating expenses, we're looking at, wages. This is the final year of our 3-year contract. We will be up for negotiations June 30th, 2027. This reflects a 3.5% increase that was included in that contract. We have, we're trying to keep between 125 to 130 drivers. We think that's about the magic number here. So we have 130 full-time slots and 2 part-time slots. We have built some turnover in here. We're, I think 2 weeks ago, we were at 127. We're now just a little bit now, but we do have a new class starting April 24th. And we have 6 operators for that class. So hopefully we'll build those numbers back up.
Does that 130 include the 2 new services, the drivers for those?
It includes Lextran, yes, microtransit.
No, because that's a professional service contract.
Yes, we built the routes in for Lextran circular into just a regular run. It's just, so it's part of our regular service now.
What's the timing on the RFP for the microtransit?
Hope to bring it before you in April. So, a couple weeks.
To post or
No, to be
who
done.
you're picking?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you've been working on that.
Yep.
Got responses?
Do.
Okay.
We have our fringe benefits, our insurance. We first had an estimate of about 15% increase. It has come down. So hopefully they're still in negotiations. We're hoping that will come down a little bit more. We ended up budgeting a 9% increase for that health insurance, but I don't expect it to be too much lower than that, but we're still hopeful. But the regular fringe, the health insurance, 401k, everything stayed the same. Workers' comp always increases a little bit because of wages. That's based on wages. But we feel pretty confident with everything else. Like I said, health insurance is the one that we're a little nervous about, but we don't think it'll be shockingly high since we've already seen some information from the broker.
Work comp injuries stay consistent year to year?
Check with that.
We can check on that.
Because if you have a flip year high,
Yeah,
hangs with you for a while, right?
yeah, we've had a couple of minor. We haven't, we've had one major that's lingering for the last 2 years, but the ones we've had lately have all been minor. But we can get those numbers. We are looking at our professional services. This includes our management fee, our legal services, our audit, payroll services, the police officers for the security at the transit center. All of that falls into professional services. Contract maintenance for the vehicles, contract maintenance for the facility, everything that could be contracted out to someone is all in that line item. We did increase legal just a tad since next year's negotiation year, because we will start those negotiations in early spring next year. That also includes some environmental costs that we have for our vendor who they were here this morning. I don't know if they were here when you were here, but they were here this morning. We're trying to increase a little bit of presence at the transit center for police officers. We built just a slight increase in this, but nothing significant. Our materials and supplies, most of this line item, as you know, is for our bus parts. We're seeing steady increase in bus parts. About 1.1 million of that is for bus parts. Everything else is your office supplies, your facility for your filters, things like that. But the majority of that is for bus parts. We have, our diesel fuel, like I said, we budgeted $4 a gallon. Every quarter of that is $50,000. The fuel other would be our CNG and our gasoline. CNG we budgeted at $2, gasoline we budgeted at $3. That line item is only for Lextran. The fuel cost for paratransit vehicles are down in the paratransit line item. We also budgeted $3 for that one too, since we pay for the fuel for those vehicles. We have seen utilities increase, as you know, this year significantly. And we took on some extra utilities at the transit center that we've taken over from Lex Park that we've been paying in the last few years. Or they've been paying those, so we've taken those over. And so between the increase here and taking over a few of those, we've seen a slight increase. It's about a 7% increase.
Why are we taking it over? Or should we have been paying it all?
We should have been paying all over. I think we paid water, they paid electric, so now we've taken those on. We have property and liability insurance, obviously goes up based on how many vehicles we have. We have auto, this line includes the auto insurance, property liability, and any other type of corporate insurance that we have. So that's a slight increase for that. Our fuel taxes, this is the money that we receive back from fuel. We pay state tax, we pay the invoice, and we get 78% of that back. And so this is where we pay it, and then miscellaneous revenue includes when we get the money back. Paratransit expense, we have looked at everything we possibly can. We've looked at fuel, $3 a gallon. We have, based on the contract, we have the overhead costs. We have the cost per trip, which goes up to $28.25 per trip on July 1st. We've built in repairs for the buses. As Fred mentioned, some of those buses are up to 14 years old. The life of those vehicles is usually 4 to 6 years, so we've tried to maintain those. Last year we budgeted $250,000 for repairs. This year we've increased that to $350,000, and so that comes out right about $8.7 million for our paratransit. Our microtransit, here's the $725,000 that we mentioned earlier that offsets the revenue for that. This will, like I said, is a one time for this year. Hopefully, depending on what the future holds, we can continue that. The dues and subscriptions, that's our active dues, American Public Transit Association, those are that dues, plus some small things that we have memberships in, but about 46,000 of that is the active dues. We have our travel and training. We reduced some of our travel and training budget from this year from last year, but this includes training for directors, managers, supervisors, and some coordinators and specialists. We have some people that have certifications, and so that's training for that. Most of those trainings are the active related that are transit specific. And then our training and awards is part of that line item also. That is for our internal customer service training. We had a contract with New Horizons a few years ago that we had a resolution for at the board level that was for customer service training for employees and things like that. So we've got some of that built back in for this year. We've also got some maintenance training on site. Some of our vendors will bring, Gillig and Cummins will bring equipment here and do on-site training. So that's very handy for our mechanics. And then we have media advertising. This is where we have a tiny bit of this would be for administrative, for advertising RFPs or job ads or doing business with Lextran type things. About $160,000 of that is for our planning and community relations department. And then our miscellaneous expenses, we have employee engagement expenses, which we do some fun things, you know, the rodeo, the holidays, we have employee meetings. A few weeks ago, we did Transit Appreciation Day, bought pizza for the employees, things like that. And then the very last line that's in miscellaneous is our lease that we have for the charging equipment. And that's just $2,000, so that's very small. But I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I didn't hear, in this budget, are we doing any new positions?
We have 2 new FTEs. We added an extra supervisor because we've added one full-time at the transit center. And it's been very helpful. And then we've added safety training manager.
Both of those are to get at safety and security.
Oh, yeah.
The transit center, as we deploy these new services, we'll put extra on operations, and then, yeah, for safety and training, to get more resources to make sure we're pushing out those safety messages and getting everybody trained appropriately. And, yeah, those two are, I think it was in the memo, definitely focused on safety and security.
And then the additional police at the transit center, you're saying it's just a little, what does that mean contextually?
We pay them $65 an hour for the services. This would cover 65 hours a week. We were currently, I can't remember what we were, it was about 40 hours a week, and we bumped it up to 65 hours a week to have police presence at the transit center. And so we have about 6 police officers that rotate that time.
And then we dictate the time, or they just during their work hours fit in the 60 hours?
This is overtime for them. So we do our best to dictate.
Right.
Sometimes there's no one available during the times that we want, so we work with them to schedule.
I guess if they, there's a slot now from 11 to 12, but that's not where our high-risk time is. They are prioritizing our maybe high-risk times.
Yes.
Is 65 hours enough, given some of the security
We
issues?
can always use more.
We increased it in 2024. It was 60, and we increased it to 65 in 2024.
What are the actual hours?
For the transit center,
No, the security.
it depends on what we can get them to do. We want them to get there, we want them there when the hotspots are.
That's what I'm kind of asking when the hotspots.
Early mornings and then late nights. Usually through the middle of the day is not too terribly bad, but it was very closer to this.
First thing in the morning, later in the evening, people tend to police themselves a little bit when there are large groups around, but when there are fewer passengers moving through or longer wait times between the vehicles, whether it's someone who's not necessarily utilizing the service, who's just utilizing the facilities or something like that, that tends to be an issue. The weekends can be an issue because of the span of frequency. People are down there for longer, and there are much fewer people down there.
What would and so we pay per hour, if we were to increase, just so to 70 or 75, we would bump up the per hour per week. Okay.
It's also helped some by having a full-time supervisor there to cover. That has also helped.
And they're just policing the transit center, not right across the street where there's another congregation of people, or in that parking lot.
Yeah, we want to keep their focus on the transit. If something happens over there,
Right.
they would respond, but we want their focus on the transit center. And usually there's a vehicle parked inside the transit center, and we ask them to get out, walk the platform, and talk to folks, and be present, be visible.
They have their car there where it can be seen, and they have their uniforms. And then they give us a report weekly of what they've done, like everything from removing smokers to extra patrols of this property, or if they've helped someone. They even list that they've had to arrest anyone, things like that. So they give us a pretty thorough report every week.
And we have direct radio communications with them.
And more what I've just noticed is that I think they corral people out of the transit center, but then just right onto the street, which I guess is more now a city problem in that across from the transit, but it gives a perception of it's in the transit center because it's under the overpass. Don't have a solution, just an observation. But
Solution is not to feed them.
Right, we ever considered finding more effective and process it out having the We've not done the analysis of a full, some agencies do have their own policing departments. So I don't think we've ever gotten to that conversation yet. This has been a relationship that we've leveraged throughout the years. We did have issues of scheduling. This was what, 2024, when the wage that we were offering was not enough to attract any of the off-duty officers who could go to Walmart or to someone else who were doing the same things that we are. I think there is a tipping point. If we're not able to get the hours that we need, that we would talk about other options, that we have to a degree talked about other options internally. A private security versus, again, more supervision, versus, again, we've not really gotten into, all right, we're gonna actually hire our own security staff. But I do think there's a tipping point in that hourly rate. I don't think that we're there yet, but I do think there is one.
And I'd be concerned, Harding, with liability, for one. You're much better off having trained police officers than however a security guard may be trained.
We've had this agreement since 2006, and it started out like $30 an hour, so we've come up over the years.
I think, George, to your point, if you have private security, they have to think all police.
Yeah.
So in this situation, we already have the police presence there.
any questions on expenses? So we talked about 2 new positions, and then last year, I think we added a couple more administrative positions, or maybe it was 2 years ago.
The bringing the eligibility assessments in-house from paratransit, that's included in here, that was rolled in this year. And then the mobility manager is one that is part of the lump sum for Lextran. So that's one, so long as we can find recurring revenue, we'll stick with it. But if we can't, we might not be able to stick with it.
So the mobility manager is helping manage the 2 new services that's being funded through the city.
Yes.
If that goes away, that position may go away.
Yes.
And we need that position because we've increased services and we need to manage.
Yes, and make sure that, when we make these agreements,
Yeah.
we bring this revenue, that we're gonna hold ourselves accountable for what we agree to provide. And then, her responsibility as well is gonna be, all right, can we work with the business communities to help bring more people into the mix to make these things sustainable in the future? That's also part of what that position is intended to do.
We present back to city council in a year on the microtransit.
I would expect something, a halftime, presentation. We don't have that scheduled. We don't have until we figure out what the implementation schedule will be. I think we'll have a little better sense of when we'll go back to tell how we've done.
I think everyone handled it really well, because I think we were advocating for 2 years, which they can't budget for 2 years. But the best way to do this pilot is to do it for 2 years, to get enough data and traction. Kind of funded at the 1 year. I think it's the 2 new services that have no ongoing revenue stream that make me apprehensive. Although I think we've made it clear that this is the 1 year, we want to do it again, but we need partners.
Yes, yes. If we're going to keep either of these services long-term, we're going to need some financial support from others. Because as we talk through our own priorities, we know that we have gaps in the system in other places, that we need more frequency, or we need more service. We need to get to Baptist Health. There's things that we know that we need to do, and if we have our room in our own budget,
And then the 320 Lextran seems like a very small number, but that's because we had already purchased the vehicles.
Yeah, there's no capital in that because we got that through the grant. And if that operation doesn't continue moving forward, then we still need the vehicles.
And that's why we bought the type of vehicles that we bought instead of something that could only be a trolley or.
Yeah, these are flexible vehicles. If the service can continue, we can do other things with these vehicles. I think it makes a lot of sense to go with the coverage. It's big enough, we think, for the service that it's on. It's maneuverable enough to handle the distillery district, which was a concern of ours.
And then was that equally funded amongst the 4 partners, or is one putting in more than the other?
LFUCG is putting in, I believe it's $250
For the Lextran?
for Lextran, and Fund for Greater Lexington was $40,000. The other partners, I believe, are $10,000 apiece.
10,000. So then when the city's looking at it, they're thinking, well, we gave 750 for micro and 250, so $1 million. Okay, 2 more questions. So we talked a lot about our new services, our continuing services. We've been seeing, we're trying to get back to our 90% on-time performance. Does everything in here feel like you're confident that we can do that? Is there any concerns?
Yeah, oh yeah, there's concerns, and there will likely need to be more interventions on hotspots in the city responding to increased traffic congestion. And Emily leads a group, we talk about that every week, every other week.
We work to meet bi-weekly to talk about whether it's traffic congestion, on-time performance, responsiveness, but also being proactive, so things that we know are changing or growing, and finding a way to split the difference between a proactive approach to these things and a reactive approach as things change throughout the city, and looking at the data on a weekly, monthly basis to better understand what's happening and how trends may be changing.
So it sounds like ongoing coordination, but no major changes to our services in this budget this year.
But there could be, much like we did with Route 12 Eastern Road, Route 4 Newtown, we might have to trim some of the end of, as far as we go to make sure that we have enough time to keep our schedule in and out to downtown. That's, I think, not certain to happen, but probably pretty likely to happen in some other areas of the city before this next fiscal year ends.
Trimming of certain routes so we can focus on our core service.
But just to make sure that we can be on schedule.
Right, be on schedule, be on time.
I able to get the drivers back to the transit center.
Yes.
Okay, that answers my other question. So we focus a lot on the new services, but just our core services. Wanted to make sure I ask questions on it.
One comment to make after the election this year, 11 council members will have 2 years or less experience. I mean, there's 15, right? So there's not a lot of institutional knowledge there. And who knows how they'll come in. Last time they came.
Well, we had a very pro-transit council members that came in, and maybe that's why we're seeing the $1 million ad. But it's unknown if we'll get continued support for revenue.
And we look forward to meeting them and working with them too.
But as probably our pressures, we see pressures in kind of flattening out of property tax, decreased federal funds, decreased passenger revenue. They will also see similar pressures at the city.
Increase for transit costs. Okay.
Okay, this chart just gives us a good look at where our revenue comes from. As we always say, we're very thankful to the property tax owners in Fayette County for 70% of our budget. And you can see some of the others are passenger fares, very small, but UK is a pretty good chunk, federal assistance. And as well as our expenses, wages and fringe obviously are our most of our cost, plus 22% paratransit. Everything else seems kind of small compared to those. More questions on the operating budget? We can move on to capital. You want to say anything else? Okay. This gives us a 5-year look at our capital plan. We have, these are actual numbers for 2026 that we've updated based on the grants. As you'll see, the vehicles that we've had, where it says paratransit vehicles, that should actually say buses and paratransit vehicles. I'm sorry for that, because we added the 8.5 million there, includes our 5339 funding, our loan funding, and our bus and bus facilities grant, competitive grants that Fred mentioned. We have bus barriers. We started on that this year. We expect that to continue through next year to, for the barriers for the bus operators for safety.
No,
It's not complete.
we were gonna do half in 26 and half in 27. We're still working on the half in 26. And this should be 600,000 total.
No, but what you got up there, that's completes the project.
Yeah.
Okay. How are the operators liking it, not liking it?
I've not heard any direct comments on it. We did a survey before we brought this to the board last year, and of the responses we got, I think they were pretty much split 50-50, but the vast majority really have an issue. So,
What does a barrier?
if you imagine walking onto the bus and you see the seat and the driver, it's almost like a door, and there's a partition that's like a window, and the windows are all down. It is essentially doors.
So it's a solid door with a window.
And the retrofits, they might look a little bit different. These are manufacturer installed, and we want to get as close to that as possible with the retrofits.
Does it impact their blind spots?
No.
So everything's behind them.
It's clear, too.
It's
It's clear.
The door's clear. So the whole thing is clear.
Not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing, but most of it. Most of it.
The important part.
Plexiglass kind of sort of
Yeah.
strong material.
Bulletproof.
Okay, we built out for paratransit vehicles, the 1.2 is using our 5339 funding and our 5310 money, which is the seniors and those with disabilities funding for paratransit vehicles, using those in years 27 through 30. You'll see those
So
down.
those are all paratransit.
Those are all paratransit. The 1.2s are all paratransit. The 8.5 includes CNG and paratransit. The funding at the bottom was the bus and bus facilities, and the 5310 enhanced mobility for seniors and those with disabilities. We built in 2027, and grant funding rolls over, so anything that we don't get in one year will roll over to the next. But we've put in a placeholder for things such as COA, long-range planning, things like that. Service vehicles, some of our support vehicles, such as some of the vans and some of the, we have some little Ford Escapes, some of those, we built in for those to be replaced. In 2028, we have a maintenance truck that needs to be replaced. That would be one that would be used to like service the bus stops. So they're a little bit more heavy duty with the back on them, with equipment on them. So we built in some service vehicle. We went several years, I think we went about 5 to 6 years without replacing any of those vehicles, so we got into last year and replacing some of those. The capital cost of contracting, this is how much that we can take of our 5307 funding to put toward the paratransit cost. So this is 1.6 million that you'll see over on the revenue side for the operating budget, as well as the capital maintenance. We have transit enhancements. That includes our shelters, our trash cans, our benches. We've tried to increase that over the last few years to go along with our ramp project that we've done. We did 75 for this year. We have increased that in the future years to 150. We're seeing a seeing more expense in those in those shelters, but also, trying to, replace what we have and, make sure that, any of the older ones, make sure they look nice and they get trash cans and benches that we need. Our IT projects is our hardware and software, some of our normal things that we have, computers. But we also have in, our, shop tools, equipment, and facilities. This includes our Avail system, our warranty for the Avail system for our, the GPS and ADL that's on the buses. That includes that. It also includes, shop tools, such as power washers, forklift in future years, and, also anything that we need for, facilities that, we might need to purchase. This would include if we had to replace, HVAC system, if we had to, do roof replacement, things like that. Security equipment, is required that you spend at least, 0.75% of your 5307 funds on security, and so that meets our requirement for that. That's used to upgrade, the bus cameras, the facility cameras, the recording systems for those, systems, and, things of that nature for security. And then the, funding is at the bottom, the 5307, 5339, 5310, which are all of our FTA funding. Our state funding has, been keeping up with our 20% match. We're hoping that that continues. It's always hard to say in future years what will happen with the state, but anything that's not covered or any new grants that we apply for, the local share would come from, the mass transit fund.
Where's the $5 million fare box?
That is on the, sheet that you have in your packet, and it shows it's unfunded, and it would be $5 million for the, fare boxes, and then you want to talk about the attendance?
Yeah, I mean, we put it on as a note on that capital plan, because up from 5 million, we don't think that's good cash forward. So it's not programmed in here, we just wanted to note it, because we know we need to talk about it.
Because this capital plan only includes things that we know that we have money for. Well, as long as the future years stay the same, but for 26 and 27, these are what we know that we'll have money for, so we only put on this actual plan, what is actually funded, and then the program includes the unfunded items.
So moving that into this plan would come from mass transit. I mean, like we do with the transit center, this might be a time to put a down payment of some sort.
Yeah, I'm looking at the red line, and where it just says 5 million proposed in capital plan, and then this other one say unfunded, so that's why.
Might have worded it in a confusing way, but
Okay.
it is not actually programmed into the plan. And if we chose to add it, it would come from the mass transit, or add any portion of it as a down payment, so to speak. And the same goes for the rear transit facility. The $1 million we put on there is certainly not going to complete the project, but we need to start thinking about, okay, we need to put some money back for that expense.
Okay, that 1 million proposed is also not in this plan.
It's not in this plan.
So what did this revenue goes into the operating budget?
The, capital cost of contracting and the capital maintenance. 80% of that cost goes back into the operating budget.
Alright, so it goes in as
Federal
revenue
funds.
and an expense.
It's an expense in the capital and it's a revenue in the operating.
If we have to do something with fare collection, and there's nothing in the budget, if puts us in a hole going into next year. So where do we put it in the budget?
It would come out of mass transit funds.
Either way that we did it, that's where we come from.
But we don't have an expense anywhere in the budget. Right. So it would, somewhere we would have to find money, that, something that is funded currently, not do it next year, to fund something. That,
Either that or take it from the fund balance.
okay. Hopefully it's not 5 million, what I'm hearing is we have to do something by this time next fiscal year.
We need a path forward, and these conversations are gonna help us with grant writing too. Once we kind of figure out what that path is, we will try to find a way to offset this. better.
Okay, any more questions?
I really do appreciate the way that capital, I know we've been doing this maybe the 2 years now with the high priority, mid priority, low priority, long term. It does help go with this really well.
Yeah, and if there's any suggestions for modifications that we need to make to that, by all means, let's do it.
And maybe it's just the way I'm reading it, the 2 items that are unfunded, I guess being clear that they're unfunded, or maybe, because there's other items that do say clearly unfunded.
Yeah, those two, the fare boxes and the parent transit facility are both really important and really costly. That's why I wanted to bring more attention to those. Other things are important too, but maybe that is something that we can think about, smaller outlays in the future. Plan this out in the years ahead. That was really the intent of putting this document together. And I think we've done a better job since we've had it together. To talk about these unfunded things. And like one item that was in here that's carried over is the facility security system. Our current system's okay at the moment. Like it's still doing what it needs to do. But in 4 more years, maybe it is no longer functioning at that level. So we just need to make sure we're thinking about it.
And what's the transit center for Dega?
That is to completely finish that space out so it's available for different uses than what we can use it for now. We did the expensive things. What we didn't do was like drywall the ceiling in. I think there's some electrical that we needed to do if we were going to have any public use for it other than like cabling or something. So that's to wrap all that up.
You have mending somewhere already?
Vending for the public?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, vending for employees in the employee side. I can think of a space that we might be able to put some vending.
We've had some vandalism in the past. We made sure that we had something that covered employees too.
Yeah. But everything's more visible to whoever's working there.
We can certainly take a look at it.
Could be an opportunity. I don't know if there's much money or not. I don't know if they would bring property beverage onto the buses or not. That's a problem. All right. I wrote down a number of things on the plan.
Okay.
Like on the bus rapid transit, when do you think we need to start thinking about needing money or something,
Think about,
needing some money for that?
so that one, the price tag is so large, we're not going to be able to do it without the city or someone else stepping up, or even the state to step up to help match a grant to get it going. I mean, we wouldn't even have a 20% match for that.
So what are you estimating as the total cost?
It would be north of 100 million is what I would think. And what we need to think about is operations.
Jeez.
Yeah,
that's what other cities are doing.
But on the operation side, we would have to think about Route 5. I mean, that we have more service on Route 5 than anything except for campus routes. So we might pare that back and put that operations into operating the BRT. The operations, the ongoing expense is what we're gonna be tasked with more than anything else. Because I think we've all been clear, we can't put up $20 million in that system, right? There's just no way. But what we can be is, we can run it, and we can find a path in operations to make it work.
Okay, let's get this on that estimate of what the total cost is.
Did we have a more recent estimate than that? That was the last one I remember.
And is there any appetite or push or anybody championing that?
The NPO has been pushing, I think, the hardest. There is some interest at the state. I'm not sure how much interest at the city we have. I think there's some, but I don't know that it's a full speed ahead at the moment.
And the MPO would be the one applying for the grant for the infrastructure changes?
We would all put in and do it together.
Fred, if we engage UK Healthcare or the University as a whole in that conversation about BRT, that would heavily serve their project.
UK was involved in the Imagine Nicholasville Road Plan. To my knowledge, they have not been involved in any funding for BRT. That's not to say they haven't been approached, the NPO may have approached them, but to my knowledge, they have not been.
Who would benefit from it? But you have to have enough housing off of Nicholasville Road, that's close enough to the bus stops. Which, there's a lot. Right, on the planning, $500,000. That's for whatever planning you have to do every so many years.
That's long range, and that would include a fair and equity analysis. That is a smaller plan that we do need to do every few years for Title VI. That's what we think the cost of that plan, the long range plan and that equity analysis would be. But I would pursue funding support before we would use all that $500,000. Because I think there's a possibility that the NPO or state could provide some planning dollars for that.
So there was a part of the summary about that planning line item that had an acronym that I didn't understand, SLX.
Yeah, SLX is Surface Lexington. That is the money that NPO receives from the Federal Highway Administration. It's like the discretionary pot of money that they have to use, and some of that can be used for planning. So each city that is a direct recipient of funding has that similar pot of money that they can use for smaller projects.
If we were to expand service, is there a logical place to do another crosstown connection?
Hamburg to Fayette Mall, cleaning that up is a logical place. In the COA, there was from a north side similar after the connection went through Citation to Windburn. We have also in the COA gone from Marcellus Road corridor over to there's a few that's in the works that we could do. If there was an opportunity for a satellite transit hub, that's what we're talking about with the Fair Transit facility, then there's even more ability to do some of that. There's always called, that's one that's really a struggle for us at the moment, is getting a back cell facility covered.
UK health facility there in a couple of years. How close do you get to it?
Costco.
Long walk.
It's a long walk, and even, yeah, it's not, that's really not the kind of service that we want to need out there.
How many people get off at Costco?
Do you know that off the top of your head?
Is it employees or is it?
It is the end of the line, so it is also hard to carry 24 rolls of toilet paper onto the vehicle. It's mostly employees and then our staff using our restrooms. We pick up more folks on the neighborhood side of Polo Club than we do on the Costco end.
It's probably more of an operations location rather than a destination.
I was just thinking what's more important, go to Costco or go to the doctor.
Then we'll be to the doctor, but I don't know that we can make even that distance work with the room we have in our schedules. I mean, we looked at that. We looked at doing a Hamburg circulator, free up some hours to get over there. We looked at untangling Liberty Road, because we got some good service there, to make that work. In every way, just to make sure that we get back to the transit center in time to do the next pulse. That seems to always be the struggle. Because if we only need a few minutes, and we add a whole other bus, all of a sudden, now we have slack in the schedule, right? We have too much service. We want interlining some routes to try to pick some of that up. So, we can always revisit that, to try to get that done. I'm just not sure that we can do it with the services as we have them now, without seriously moving something from somewhere else to make that happen.
That was included in a crosstown kind of group, could you envision?
Probably to Fayetteville, and that will be taking our Tates Creek route, which goes down Tates Creek and then sort of loops around the neighborhood and back over to Fayetteville. That would come down Tates Creek and back up. The service that's kind of going east to west would be part of that crosstown. We have another partial crosstown connection there called Route 18. So all that would be funneled into one, and then on up to the Pepsi. When we put that service plan together, I don't even think that one went back to south when we were looking at 4 vehicles. 6 vehicles. It was 4, 6.
6, that's where I died. It was supposed to be a net zero change, and it was like a
Plus 2.
plus 2 or 3, once it all shook out.
What was the frequency?
40 minutes. Or 45, sorry, 45 minutes. So the frequency was not necessarily in alignment with the potential demand and with the volume of vehicles, and still above that 30-minute frequency. It's just not a solid investment.
And the problem was Route 18 doesn't have a whole lot of service right now. I mean, there's one bus, period, right? So you're adding to that as well as streamlining what was on Main Street. So it was,
I don't have any other questions.
Is this the end of the presentation? Or,
yes, yes.
well, I have one big picture question. Now that we've almost finished our strategic plan, did anything change significantly? Like I mentioned, a focus on safety and security. I don't know if that's come out of the strategic plan or any other shifts this year because of that effort.
Yeah, I think safety and security is one, along with some other things that have happened here in the past couple of weeks that's helped drive those discussions. Technology has been something that we've made sure that it's hard the way we do it to say, all right, this is our technology line item, because technology is now part of just about everything. But again, employee engagement is something else that we really thought about, making sure that we're covering those are the ones that kind of jump out at me as we put this together. Of course, finance was one of the major themes and goals. I mean, this is a pretty good budget. Yeah, I think it shows up in here.
Artie, do you have anything else?